Welcome back to the Worthy for 30 podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tash. With me today, again, we have a returning guest, Elissa Kalver, the founder and CEO of We Got This, and a new guest, a new friend of the platform and the show, Hugimals founder and CEO, Marina Khidekel. Welcome to the show, both of you.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Great to
Excellent.
be here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time. We're using this conversation to talk about how both of your businesses, Elissa, you run a nonprofit, Marina, a for-profit business, but how it's all based in empathy and care in different, manifestations. So Marina, because you're new to the show and new to this world, love to hear about Hugimals, and of course the audience would love to hear about Hugimals and what you're working on right now.
Yeah, so it's great to be here. Thank you. I love this podcast, and I'm so happy to be here with Elissa too. I'm the founder of Hugimals World. It's a 2.5-year-old company. We make weighted plushies and pillows for anxiety and stress relief for both adults and kids. And you can see some of our products behind us. We launched with the OG Hugimals, which are pretty substantially weighted plushies that are designed to hug you back, to actually feel like a hug, because hugs help us release the feel-good hormones, the oxytocin, the dopamine, the serotonin, that actually changes our chemistry and makes us feel more grounded and calmer and more relaxed, and actually tamps down the stress response from our sympathetic nervous system. Yeah, since we launched, we've introduced new lines, weighted pillows, different plushies, and we're lucky that our products have resonated with a really wide age group that actually surprised even me. So it's parents and grandparents of kids with anxiety, which is so many these days, and also adults, everyone from young adults, college students needing hugs away from home, to adults to seniors maybe who live alone and can't have a pet but need that grounding comfort and that feeling of touch.
Excellent. And we'll get back to, we had a catch up before this recording about how you started, where the insight came from and that inflection point. But I would love to, first say hi to Elissa. It's been a while since we recorded. I saw, when I went to the wegotthis.org website, I saw a new revamp. So love to, just for the people who, again, it's been a while. What is We Got This? And tell us about some of those recent updates.
Yeah, well, thanks for checking it out. And I'm excited to be back on. I agree with Marina. I have so much fun talking to you and listening to you. And you bring together such amazing people and entrepreneurs and all these things that I'm just honored to get to continue on the ride. But wegotthis.org does indeed have a new look. So if you head to our website, we have some new brand colors that are really fun. And way beyond that, we've fully revamped 2 major pieces of the website that have always been in my vision, that we just, it takes time to pull all these things out. One of them being a resource directory. So we've applied a really robust filtration system on a way to find other nonprofits and free resources that you need. So you can filter out, if you're a thriver, a patient, caregiver, do you need financial support, wellness, retreats, like whatever these things are, you can narrow it down and see so many amazing nonprofit partners. So we're continually growing that. And then on the other side of our recommendations, which are products like Hugimals, we've embedded our own shop using Shopify Collective and their dropship model. So it's allowed us to have a lot of the partners that we've had, but directly through We Got This. What's amazing about that is, one, it's a way to get donations right back to wegotthis.org. So with every purchase, we get a percentage back. And then it also makes it easier for registry users, because there's a button that just says add to my registry. So you can still add things to your registry from any website using the tools we've had this whole time. But we also wanted to make it really easy from within. Some of our biggest feedback was about just like more ways to get recommendations and figure out what they need. So we also implemented Thriver lists. So fellow Thrivers like me putting together their top 5 recommendations of what made them feel best or help most through their chemo treatments or surgeries or whatever that looked like for them. And then also doing some guides. So we have different people, like I did one like what to say and not to say to cancer patients. We have ones about parenting with cancer. It's a mix of like doctors and, different professionals, drivers like me, all sorts of fun stuff. play around, check it out. If you want to be a part of any of that or submit for any of those things, whether it's a recommendation of a product or service, nonprofit resource, or fellow thriver that wants to contribute, just let us know and would love to have you.
Okay, excellent, excellent. A lot of exciting updates, and also you have a book coming out.
Yes, tomorrow. I don't know when this airs. So the book is launching officially on June 3rd, which is the day before my 38th birthday. And birthdays become all that much bigger, when you're living with cancer. I'm so excited about it, and it's going to be great. The book itself is about a lot of these things and starting the nonprofit and living with cancer. It also addresses some of my favorite recommendations and things like that. But I really think it's for everyone. It's not just a cancer book. It's about living, and I think that we should all be prioritizing that.
Prioritizing living. So Marina, in terms of, helping, at least the initial outlook for Hugimals World was to help kids with anxiety to feel more relaxed, with that plushie, that weighted plushie. But I also saw, and another one of the many reasons I thought this conversation would be great to have Elissa on is that you partnered with the Glioblastoma Foundation recently. So I'd love to hear not just about that partnership, but some of the other partnerships that have broadened the aperture of Hugimals World and what sort of feedback you're receiving or sort of reception from those
Yeah,
partnerships.
no, great question. So you're right. Even though I created Hugimals for my own anxiety, especially at night, um, when we launched, I decided to launch in the toy world, because they're stuffed animals and it reads as stuffed animals, and I figured people would see them as a toy. So that's what we did. Um, and about 5 to 6 months later, we started getting press and we got feedback from customers. Basically, I realized over half of our customers were adults using our products for themselves, not just for kids. So it was both. It was, for kids, but also adults were using our plushies for their own anxiety, just like I, wanted something that was beautifully designed that I couldn't find, that was heavy enough to work in adults, that, could stand alone as an object in your,
Hmm.
place, that didn't look like necessarily a toy or something so juvenile. So I realized that, and we quickly had to change our assets, and show more adults. And we got people thanking us for normalizing weighted plushies as a comfort tool for adults, because they felt stigma, or they felt like they were weird. Like, is it weird that I'm buying this for myself? And like, not even a little bit. It's not weird at all. And then the partnerships started coming. So yes, we recently partnered. We had 2 partnerships last month. One was with the Glioblastoma Research Organization for Brain Tumor Awareness Month. And we did a heart to hug pillow. You could see maybe a heart behind me. Those are weighted plush pillows, 5 pounds, to ease anxiety and bring comfort. We did one with them in a soothing gray color, because gray is the color of brain cancer awareness, brain tumor awareness. And we also did a sea glass green one with the Mental Health Coalition, which is Kenneth Cole's coalition of mental health organizations and people who want to crush the stigma around that. And that became a really important goal for me once I started hearing from the customers saying, I'm getting this for myself, but is it weird? And we just kept getting that question over and over again, and that comment on our socials and all that stuff. And
Hmm.
it's not weird. I really do think the pandemic changed the way that we see comfort. And, before, comfort and softness and those things were for kids. And after, when the pandemic hit, we realized adults need those things too. You don't stop needing comfort and softness and anxiety relief and tools for those things because you age out of childhood. You just don't stop needing it. And I feel like people realized that when, when the world shut down and after the pandemic, more and more adults just said, sorry, there's no stigma. I'm using these tools for myself. So, a lot of our partnerships have to do with, um, products for adults but also kids. We've partnered with foundations, kids and siblings separated in foster care, and each one gets their own Huggimal. So they're hugging the same thing as their sibling who they're not with. And teens and kids who are victims of traumatic crimes, we've partnered with an organization to get Huggimals to them. So these kinds of things, they just make it all worth it. Because running a business as a solo founder, especially a bootstrap business, it can get hard and there's ups and downs, but the partnerships really help keep me going.
Okay, excellent. And Alyssa, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I did. Well, one, obviously, I love all that so much. I think what you're doing is so great. I've really noticed this throughout having, a nonprofit geared towards cancer thrivers and patients for the past several years, is the things that transcend age, I think, are so powerful. It's like a lot of times we don't realize how many things there are. And from a not as fun way of talking about it, like cancer doesn't discriminate age. The AYA, so adolescent young adults, are ages 15 to 39 in the cancer community. And we're off in that bubble in the cancer community that's like, oh, you're too young to have cancer, because they picture either pediatric or they picture old people. And unfortunately, it's all of us that get affected, not only by necessarily having it, but having people that we love with it and other things. And so um, I love that so much. A great, I think, crossover example of that is we partner with Lego, and we've been delivering Lego flowers to patients, and not as cozy by any means, but the idea that we can deliver Legos at CHLA or Children's Hospital Orange County, and the kids love it, but the adult nurses love it too, and I bring them to my infusion center at UCLA, and there's no age that doesn't feel a spark of joy from a Lego flower or a weighted stuffed animal or so, and these things, I think, normalizing that it's available, and not only normalizing, but like having on the forefront of people's minds, as something to get someone. Because I always joke, like, there's usually a product that gets given too much to to people diagnosed with cancer, and I'm sure this happens with other things too. My thing was I got so many blankets, and I love blankets. I just got a lot of them. And coloring books is a big one, and maybe candles, which I find an odd one because usually scented things isn't the best for people going through chemo. But we lean into like the stereotypical things, and we don't think outside of the box more. And so I think it's great that that's being brought up. And I honestly haven't had weighted stuffed animals, but I'm like, oh man, if I had, thought of that more, like, I'm glad that I am now. And that's something we'll have on the forefront that'll have to get added in as a rec.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of like loneliness, for example, Marina, you touched on that, and Elissa, to a degree too, not just in this conversation, but previously when we first recorded. What are some of the, again, that feedback that you're receiving? Some of those anecdotes, like, "Thank you, Hugimals World. Thank you, we got this. I thought I was alone. I thought I didn't know who to turn to." What are some of those anecdotes that you've been hearing from consumers or users of your site? I don't know if Marina or
Dude,
Alyssa wanna
Yeah,
take
no,
that.
I can
yeah,
go. I
well,
can
yeah.
go. And it's funny because when in the down moments of running a company, and this year is an especially difficult one, that's what I do. I look at our customer reviews, and that keeps me kind of like feeling, hopeful and inspired and uh, motivated, because I can see these people telling us like, this has changed my quality of life for the better. It really moves me. We were talking about hospitals before I launched. So my background is as a journalist, and I would not put anything out into the world without doing a ton of research and validation. I'm nerdy like that. And so we did a pilot in children's hospitals with Hugimals before we launched. So we sent them to multiple children's hospitals across the country, 5 to 7, I believe. And the feedback started coming in, and the hospital staffers were saying, you know, we want to order more. These helped our most, either agitated or, patients who were stressed, like they helped them in minutes. And they kept saying, one hospital kept saying, we give these to our code bear kids. And I didn't know what that was. And they said, well, we can't say code red over the loudspeaker when a child needs security or doctors or help. So we say code bear, and we give them a Hugimal, and it just changes what they think is happening in the room within minutes, and it calms them. And I got chills, and that was the kind of feedback that I kept getting over and over from the hospitals. And that's the point where I knew, this is a valid product, this is a valid idea, it's actually helping people in a real life setting. And since then, the feedback has just it's just blown my mind, honestly. I was just reading one where a woman got one of our new hug arounds, which are actually have one in my lap for anxiety. This is Pax the Penguin. These are weighted and warmable weighted plushies that also act as neck wraps. So I'm wearing one. I sometimes get complimented on my fur collar, but it's not
Love
that.
that.
And so she was saying that she got it for herself and fell in love. And then she got it for her mother, who is in a senior memory care facility and often gets incredibly lonely, to your point, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she was saying that it's not just a stuffed animal to them, it's a friend. You know, it's someone they can turn to. It's a comfort. You know, whenever you need a hug, it actually physically administers a hug. But, you know, it's her knowing that she's using the same thing as her mother, who she doesn't see as much as she might like because she lives far away from her. It like very much moved me because it was across generations and
Mm-hmm.
across different, you know, kinds of anxiety and feelings of loneliness and different kind of issues that people might have. And the fact that these are hug arounds are helping both the mother and the daughter was just, I was crying, you know, reading it. So those are the kinds of reviews that we get. And, you know, we get the, my child is finally sleeping, or I can finally fall asleep. You know, I couldn't sleep
Mm-hmm.
before. And obviously we know that lack of sleep really contributes to mental health decline and anxiety and all those things. So the fact that, you know, it's not just a comforting stuffed animal, it's actually a tool that can help people live life better and feel more in control of their mental health. And that's what gets me, you know, when you're feeling down, you just like want to do something. You need like not a quick fix, but like a tool that can help you in the moment. And they're, you know, the customers are telling us that that's what we've created for them. And that's just incredibly meaningful for me.
I love
That
that.
is amazing. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Alyssa.
well, it reminds me of when I first started chemo. It was, you know, still in the middle of COVID, and it was ebbing and flowing which rounds my husband could come in with me or not. You know, so there were some that he'd have to stay in the waiting room, some he could come in, and like this would have been such a great solution that we could have each maybe had our own Hugimal, you know, available to us. Yeah, well, and people far away. You know, not everyone can be right near us, so I think that that concept and you know, people feeling that and giving that feedback is so great. And then kind of offering that in the forefront, it like, you know, plants that seed for that opportunity. So I think that's wonderful.
I love that you said that because I'm a founder who's like customer obsessed. So when customers leave gift messages, when they buy a Hugimals or Hug Around or anything on our site, I look at what they write and, you know, we don't tell them to do this, but across the board, a lot of them write some version of, I can't be there to hug you, but Pax the Penguin will give you hugs from me, you know? And so it's like
Yeah.
a hug from far away when we can't always be there. And it's interesting, you know, if I post something like that on our social media, inevitably most people are like, that's wonderful and adorable and I love that. But some people are like, how sad that we've come to this, that we don't have this human contact and that you need a stuffed animal for a hug. But it's not that. It's not that we're not getting hugs from our loved ones. It's that we can't be surrounded by them 24 hours a day. Like you said, sometimes there's situations like chemo or you're in the hospital or, you know, you're grieving and you're not going to be around someone 24/7. So why not have a tool that you can pick up when you need to? And why not have a hug from somebody that you love, you know, even when they're not around you? I just
Yeah,
love that
absolutely.
message that they send that message.
I love that. Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I think, you know, a lot of it with, you know, people kind of validating that proof of concept like the hospitals did and all of that. We had that early on when I started the GoFundMe for this idea of a nonprofit gift registry. And, you know, at first it was friends and family donating and supporting. And it's like, well, they would support me even if the idea was terrible, you know? But then it started really building beyond that. We raised over 100,000 in that first GoFundMe. And that's when you start realizing like, wow, these are people I don't know now who heard about it. Or, you know, people are coming back and donating again to make sure I hit this goal. And it's when you start realizing that there's this like real need for something that people didn't realize there was a need for. And I think that that's so exciting. And as entrepreneurs, it's hard to find things that really have a place in the market, you know? And I think when you do come up with something that like really fills in a need in a gap, it's huge for so many people. And it's like such a exciting piece to be able to be a part of, like moving forward something that feels so special. So it's
And you
cool.
hit on something too, like when it's the people that don't know you that are starting to buy it and talk about it online and recommend it to people and donate in your case, or that's when you've hit upon something that there's a real need for, among other people that don't know you, never heard of you, but they know what you're
Yeah.
creating and they want it and they need it.
Absolutely. So tonight, because the book launch is tomorrow, so tonight we're doing a little pre-launch special event at the Magic Castle in Hollywood. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's a private magicians club. It's 21 plus at night, and it's really exclusive because you can only go with a member or if you're invited by a member. So it's definitely a common like bucket list item. And so my big goal of tonight was to make sure that we covered the cost and raised some funds for We Got This, but also that we could share the night with a good amount of fellow thrivers and people affected by cancer directly. And so we were able to donate over 40 of the tickets, so like half the tickets for tonight to fellow patients and survivors and thrivers. And we partnered with Liquid Death. They're going to be there tonight with some cans also. Love them. And it was Polly from Liquid Death who reached out and was like, I have a friend that is local and has cancer in treatment. And I know that she's like always wanted to go to the Magic Castle. Is there any way you could fit her in? I was like, yeah, of course. And so she connected with the friend's husband and let him know. And it turned out that the friend already was using a registry at wegotthis.org. And like, that's where it just, that feeling of like, wow, like how cool is that? Like they didn't know me. Like we weren't directly connected at all at the time that resonated and they found out about it. And now like we get to be connected. And I think it's like the world's so big and we also can make it so small and intimate. And it's really exciting to be a part of that.
That is amazing. Yeah, absolutely. To see, that you've created something again, that you're striking the match, and then, everyone else is creating the flame to connect with each other around something that's so special and so unique. And so powerful. It's also amazing, as we think about this, or as I think about this, one of the questions I like talking or asking guests is the Steve Jobs quote. And Elissa may have heard me say this ad nauseum, is, we can't connect the dots looking forward. We can only connect the dots looking backwards. So Elissa, you're this entrepreneur, you've started this nonprofit gift registry, but then it's also some of the disparate points in your background, going to school for entrepreneurship, then owning a boxing gym, and now running We Got This. Would love to hear, expound upon those dots. And same thing with you, Marina. Again, you started as a journalist, but a lot of those disparate sort of experiences help in aggregate make you into that successful and aspirational entrepreneur that you are today. So Elissa, kick us off in terms of some of those dots.
Yeah. Well, and I, not to bring up the book again, but I did write like a whole chapter on collaboration, versus competition, and how I kind of brought together this idea of We Got This, and mainly through partnerships. And that's what I did throughout my whole career. So like my main like normal job throughout my career was always in financial services. I was a financial advisor, did corporate retirement plans, and how I grew that business was all through relationships, with other advisors, companies, payroll people. I was one of those payroll people originally. That's how I knew to go that route. And it was always bringing together people and like working together and realizing that we were better together, that not everything is like needs to be competitive. Sometimes, we partner with so many other nonprofits that others at first, some people would even say to me, like, you might not want to partner with so many nonprofits because then you're competing for funding or other things. And it's like, we're not. Like, what we do is so different from what Leukemia and Lymphoma Society does or Teen Cancer America. But together, we can all do so much more, And I've just stuck to that wholeheartedly. Like, and that I truly believe is what has allowed us to grow so quickly, is maybe not taking some of other people's dots in the past. Because I do think that if I had followed like certain normal trends in the nonprofit world, I might not have like pulled in all these extra partners, but I kept the dots that I knew how to build from my career in my life. And what's most fun, like at the end of the day, what I'm doing right now is because I live with stage 4 cancer, and there are other ways I could spend my time, and this is the only way I want to spend it. Like I just am obsessed with what I'm doing, and it's the coolest thing. And it like is really what helps me fully live my life. And so if that's going to be the case, I want to do it partnering with other people. And so, yeah, exactly, like visually taking all those cues from my career, my life, and pulling them back in. And I still, partner with some of the old advisors I used to work with. I
Oh,
still
wow.
we have a golf tournament June 9th outside of Boston, and the golf balls were donated by ADP, where I used to work and sell payroll and 401k. Like these, once you're in my orbit, like you're not getting out. Like we're in it together. And I think that that's a super positive thing. Hopefully, if you want to get out, you can. But most people choose. It's been a wild ride, and lucky to have so many people along for it.
That is amazing. And Marina, love to hear
Yeah.
those dots.
Yeah, I think the idea of connecting the dots from your past is, you're not going to see it in the moment necessarily like the Steve Jobs quote, but I think it's so powerful because once, it all comes into view when you realize why you're doing what you're doing and how it connects to who you were. And it's a really powerful moment, and it's worth reflecting and thinking about that. And if those dots aren't connecting and it's not coming into focus, then it's worth thinking about, is this what I'm meant to be doing, or would I be better served doing something else? And I've been both places. So I'm an immigrant. My family moved to the States from Russia when I was 2. And so in a lot of immigrant families like mine, maybe people can relate, mental health just wasn't a topic that was discussed at all. And I just had, it was like, if you're not bleeding or dying, like, then what do you have to complain about? We brought you to a better place, just suck it up, and that kind of wisdom. And I don't blame my parents because they didn't have the tools to talk about it. No one taught them. So it's just like the, cycles of generational trauma that persist a lot in immigrant families. I didn't know at the time that, I wanted to break it. I didn't know that it was a thing. I just knew that I was a teenager with anxiety and depression, and I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. And I didn't feel comfortable talking to my family about it. And so what I did was I read teen magazines when that was still a thing. When I was a teenager, I would read magazines like, 17 and YM and those kinds of things that, before your time, Melissa. But I vowed to, they sort of validated that there were different ways to feel and it was okay. And there's things you can do, and, validated and gave me information about what I was experiencing and feeling in a way that I couldn't really get from my barely English speaking parents and, my middle school friends. And so I just saw those mastheads and people on staff of those magazines, and I was like, I'm going to be on the other side of that masthead. I'm going to decide what stories go into the magazines, and I'm going to help, girls and women like me who don't really have a place to turn. And so that's what I did. That's all I ever wanted to do. I grew up in Ohio. I moved to New York as soon as humanly possible, like skipped college commencement, graduated a year early, and just like came here and started working in magazines, which I did I covered mental health extensively. Service journalism is sort of like advice journalism with, you talk to experts, you find statistics and all the stuff. And so I did that for a long time, and then I left to run content for Thrive Global for 4 years, and that's also mental health related. It's, tiny micro steps that help you live with, a better life. And so I did that for a while, and I was working on Hugimals, the idea for it sort of behind the scenes for a few years. Experts that I was talking to for articles were warning about this impending anxiety epidemic. And this was even before the pandemic happened, right before. And so I would go to New York Toy Fair as a journalist and see, are any of the big companies making a nice weighted plush, like a beautiful one that adults could use, that kids could use, because there's nothing like this, that I would want. So weighted blankets were too hot and smothering for me. I tried it. I liked the idea of it. I liked the weight of it, but I couldn't use it. I was actually using my husband's arm as a weight to help me fall asleep because I had a lot of nighttime anxiety, and that was obviously not comfortable for him every night. So I went looking for other tools, and I just couldn't find what I wanted. And when Hugimals started taking off, and when we started getting these amazing pieces of press and winning awards and partnerships and all the things were starting to happen, I started realizing I'm still doing what I set out to do as a kid, which is to help others live with less stress and more joy and help validate what they're feeling. But I'm doing it through a physical product instead of words, which I had thought I would do my entire career. I was a content person. I never, ever thought I'd be a consumer product founder. And yet here I am. doing it, still doing what I set out to do, but in a very different way. And that was really meaningful when I realized that.
Yeah, it's like super meaningful, and it's amazing because like when you and I spoke initially, you took your aptitude for PR communications and did your own press for Hugimals World. So it's not like it went to the wayside. Whatever you learned and all that great experience, you were able to parlay it into Hugimals World success.
I think that's a really good point, and it throws back to something Elissa was talking about that really resonated with me as well. Even if you do something completely different and you take a risk and you make a career change, or you become a founder and for the first time, everybody has a secret advantage, right? Everybody has, people say unfair advantage, but I think it's fair because we earned it. But if you had a career in the past, or if you had life experience in the past, those experiences and those learnings and those skills and those relationships, very importantly, that Elissa was talking about, like, stay with you. And that's going to help you on your journey creating whatever it is that you want to create. Even if you don't have direct experience in a new field, you do have that advantage. So use it, and like use whatever you have. Like Elissa had relationships, right? She sounds like you're an incredible relationship builder. And you brought that with you to We Got This, and that helped fuel your success. And one thing I brought was I was never a PR person, but I was an editor on the other side of, getting all those press pitches. I would get up to 100 pitches from PR agencies and people every day. Most of them were not great. They had mistakes in them. They were dressed as the wrong person. I was working at Cosmopolitan and I would get PR pitches for hubcaps. It's like, do you know where I work? And please do a little research. And so I knew sort of the basics of what to do and how to tell a story in a way that would resonate with writers and editors in the press. And for the first 4 months of launch, that's basically all I did. Is I did our own PR. I reached out to people I knew, people I didn't know, asked for every favor in the book, did all these things to tell the story of why I was launching this product line, why I was leaving this 20-year-long career as a content person to launch a line of stuffed animals, which shocked my friends and family. Like, nobody knew I was working on this. I kind of kept it on the down low until I launched. And they were like, wait, what are you doing? And what? So that story and that through line really helped people also understand why a journalist and editor was creating a line of weighted plush. And, those connections sparked in their minds as well. Like, oh, we get it. And I know why you wanted this. Like, I also have anxiety. Like, let me check this out. So, I really do think use your advantage. Elissa was a finance person, so I'm sure that really helped you when you were crowdfunding and when you were launching and all the financials of it. I'm not a finance person, so I have someone smarter than me doing that part. But we're all experts in something, and we all have skills that are transferable and applicable. And figuring out how to use it in your next chapter, next adventure, is going to help fuel you.
Yeah, 1000%. And I know we're getting towards the end of this conversation. Is all about what you're touching on is manifesting, right? It's like, wait, you're launching this toy business, you're a journalist for 20 plus years, but then you were specific, I imagine, with, okay, I'm launching it and these are the reasons why, and very specific. I imagine, Elissa, when you first started crowdfunding, started talking to people about We Got This, you were very specific in terms of how you were manifesting and putting that into the world, which where I want to again end this conversation is being of service, right? Elissa can attest to this. Elissa, you and I were talking on our first recording. Who are the 2 brands that you've been trying to reach out to that are the most requested products in the We Got This ecosystem? And it was Aura Ring, and Squishmallows, right?
Squishmallow, yeah.
Yes. So where did that go with those 2?
I love telling this story. I was hoping I would get to tell it. Yeah, in the first time that we did the podcast together, you asked me that, and I told you Aura Ring and Squishmallow were 2 that people love and just haven't had a chance to connect with them directly. And within probably a week of that conversation, I already, through Eric, had meetings with the CEO of Aura Ring and some amazing people at Squishmallow. And so I have a giant bin of Squishmallows in my garage that we've been continually surprising and sending out to patients as they need them or request them. And we're in discussions with Aura Ring and about different ways to partner. But I've also, since expanding that and kind of telling that Aura Ring story, I've heard some amazing stories back about a lot of it in the cancer community of people where the Aura Ring actually like helped predict certain areas of decline and like let them know when they were getting sick. Some a bit more, tragic scenarios, but like literally they felt fine. And then because of having regular tracking of their vitals and their readiness score and all that with Aura Ring, they realized something felt off, like they felt fine. And like one of a dear friend of mine who we lost, like that was just days before he ended up in the ICU. And we can't like control these horrible things that might happen, but how amazing that there's like some tools out there that, his wife, told me that it provides her so much comfort, like wearing her Aura Ring all the time, so that she'll never not wear it, knowing that it was so accurate in predicting things. And so yeah, just the way that you bring together people, Eric, is beyond anything, and I'm just grateful to be in your orbit. So those are two very cool examples.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate that update, and we appreciate that update. But yeah, I feed off the energy. I thought I was persistent and tenacious, and then I met you. So I had to up the ante just a little bit. So it definitely was a challenge that I was willing to take on. And switching gears to you, Marina, you mentioned some partnerships. I love doing this. You mentioned some partnerships that have come to fruition. Who are you looking to talk to? Who are you looking to meet?
And I'm invested now too. So like I'm listening also.
I know, I'm also invested. And by the way, Elissa, your logo, probably so many of your followers don't know. It goes over their head, but it's a version of MTV, it's like.
Oh yeah, that's our not.
Yes, I love
I've been looking at it.
This is our traditional logo, and then that's one of my favorite logos of ours. That's hilarious. Did as a '90s take because I love the '90s.
I love the 90s too. Well, we are talking with a couple of companies right now that I'm so excited about that I can't really share quite yet, but I'm interested in connecting with any mission-driven companies who have comfort, stress relief, joy, at their core, and maybe a little nostalgia too, because we're seeing that with the kid-adult trend. Some people hate that term, but adults are buying all of these toys and plushies for themselves, and it's just such a growing category that it can't be ignored. There's something going on with comfort and with nostalgia and with the period that we're living in. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a mental health company, but it could be a beauty company, it could be a fashion company. I'm really open to conversations and ways to collaborate, whether it's custom plushies that we make together or different events that we throw together or campaigns, that kind of thing. So one of my favorite partnerships that we did was we launched our Heart to Hug pillow line with Marina Khidekel and her foundation, the Joyful Heart Foundation, which supports survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, and child abuse. And so we've launched several colorways of our pillows with them. And she's like just an incredible advocate and an activist for those causes, and just, a ray of sunshine as a human being. I'm going to the premiere of her first directorial debut, a film about her mom, Jane Mansfield, next couple weeks from today. And that was just an incredibly meaningful partnership because Marina is beloved by so many and, has been, on SVU for over 25 years now, which is unheard of and crazy. But she walks the walk and talks the talk. She's there supporting victims of abuse. And it was just a joy and honor to partner with her and her team and foundation. So that just gets me so excited. It's really the mission behind, what these companies or nonprofits are doing. So who knows? I've heard of your prowess in connecting, Eric, and I'm like so impressed by, what you're doing and what you're setting out to do and helping in such a huge way through connections. And I love that.
And I just want to say, go ahead, please.
I was just going to point out too, Marina, what I love about with your products and how like the hugging one versus a pillow and having like different options of sizes and things is like, it's, anxiety and stress and all of this is so different throughout our lives. Like the types of stresses and anxiety I had in like my life in career versus when I was in school or other things versus now, like they're totally different. And I think that like the way that you sometimes comfort yourself is different too. Like I very much like sometimes just need to lay down with something like heavy on my face, like, or certain things. Like I could see just having one of those like hearts on my face.
Yeah, on your face. I was thinking on your chest, but
but like, I don't know what it is. Sometimes I just like, because I a lot of times too, if I am like having a bout of nausea, other things, sleeping can be tough. And it's funny where like, so a lot of people had sent me like face masks, and which is such a good thought, but for some reason it's not the same. Like I really need, I actually will sometimes put a Squishmallow and like kind of hug it for more weight. So I think I've just been waiting for your product.
We can wrap one of these guys around your face.
Exactly. That'd be perfect. Yeah. But just the different scenarios, like when I'm at chemo, like having something wrapped around me is like the perfect thing. I just think, I say a lot, like meeting people where they're at, and that's not always the same thing. It doesn't always feel the same or look the same. And so I really love that, not only the transcendent of aging, but like just all the different ways that you can utilize it, I think is a great way to be able to do that.
Thank you. That's wonderful of you to say. And I get excited designing each product line because I can imagine the ways in which different people will use them and gift them and find meaning in them. And so that just, it's a completely different way to use the creativity I used before as an editor and as a writer, but it's so rewarding and it's so fun. And did I ever think I'd be a founder, and was my path to it linear? Absolutely not. That's a story for another day. But, yours probably won't be too if you listening out there want a different career or want to change in your life. But it's so worth it if the purpose is there.
Oh, 1000%. I think that's a great way to put a pin in our conversation. It's not this is the first and last time we're going to be speaking. It's going to be, one of many conversations. And Marina, as you were talking about brands and nonprofits, the wheels start turning. I had Tara from Yawn World on the show. She's a friend who actually just moved to Boston with her family, which makes makeup, chemical-free makeup for Gen Alpha for young kids. Like, could that be a partnership? And so I'll reach out to her. And then Sarah from Welcome Baby USA, which puts together new baby kits for low income or underprivileged moms across the United States to give their babies the essentials that they need for the first 4 weeks of life. So could there be a potential partnership there? So something to tinker. Excuse me?
Yeah. For the moms who need comfort, because our products are 2 and up, so not for newborns.
Not for newborns. Okay.
But that's an incredible idea. Both of those are incredible. Eric, thank you. That's so smart.
Of course. Just again, right off the top of my head of like, who do I know?
Pretty good for right off the top of your head.
Yes. Elissa, Marina, pleasure, great conversation. It's about wanting to live a life full of purpose and mission and life of abundance, right? It's, I love what Elissa was saying. It's not about competition, it's about collaboration. So, whatever we're working on, as we talk about it, as we want to see the fruits of our labor come to life, is how do we get people to come along the journey? I think is, really key. And I really do appreciate all the insights and wisdom that you both shared with us today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. I think one through line is being adept at telling your story in a way that resonates with others. And that's something that both of you are so good at.
Well, likewise. And so nice to meet you, Marina. And I say all the time about prioritizing comfort. I think it's so huge, like alongside treatment and staying alive. We need to, thrive and live our lives. And part of that is being comfortable and happy. And I think that there's some really easy ways for us to accomplish that, like a weighted stuffed animal that we overlook sometimes as we're trying to get the grand cure per se, or other things. And I'm so glad we got to connect, and no doubt that Eric connects the best people. So thank you for having me on again. I'm honored.
Thank you, Eric. Same.
We are